All right, I'm gonna go through what I would consider the one thing I changed that changed my physique the most. And I'm gonna start with I used to train in a gym on machines, on cables, lateral raises, bicep curls, you name it. My goal was to get as big as possible. I did this through my athletic career as a baseball player, even in my college days when I was playing baseball. I still had this mindset. I want to get as big as possible. And I did a lot of bodybuilding exercises to do that. A lot of machines, a lot of isolation exercises. What happened was after my baseball career, I got into coaching. I started working and volunteering and interning at a place called Athletes Performance, which I ended up working there for about 7 years. But when I started, I remember very vividly, I was there all day. It's a free gig. You're there, you're in a gym. Obviously, I want to work out. So what would happen was I would find time to work out in a place with no machines, zero. So I had to figure out, number one, I got to start using a barbell for everything. Ironically, what I learned was you can get bigger with compound exercises, and I don't think many people would disagree with this. Compound exercises will make you bigger than isolation exercises. There's no doubt in my mind. That's one of the reasons I'm so bullish on the low rep sets and the tonnage and all the things I talk about. So this was an accident. I was forced to start training this way. Even as a baseball player, deadlifts were one of those things that just weren't done because they talk about, oh, it's risky. Well, everything's risky, and I kind of learned, the squat and the deadlift are just staples, and they don't have to be just a back squat or just a deadlift. And you might have heard me talk about using all these other variations of back squat, front squat, pin squat, Anderson squat, pause squats, all the squats, deficit deadlifts, RDLs, all the deadlift variations, block pull, rack pull, sumo deadlift, conventional, you name it, all of them. So I was kind of thrown into this movement-based, wide open space. You got dumbbells and barbells. That's it. And without a doubt, that was the number one thing that I changed, that I had to change, didn't have a choice. And it was such a difference that even when I would go to a gym and I had all the choices, I still elected to spend my time on the barbell and the free weights. I would have done anything to get bigger in training. That was legal. And so my results were so drastic that even when I go to my normal gyms I used to go to, I still train this way. That was easily the number one thing that changed my physique the most. The number two thing was using strength exercises for hypertrophy and understanding that the exercise isn't what makes something good or bad. I'm sorry, it doesn't make something strength or hypertrophy. A lot of people associate barbells with strength. So they're referred to as strength exercises, but they're not. The rep scheme is what makes it strength, hypertrophy, or speed. The barbell is advantageous because it allows you to lose the most weight. So what I learned was, and this is a literal thing that happened to me in about 2013, I was like 230 pounds. I'm 6'3", and I just realized everybody's doing the same thing. Everybody's doing 5x5, 3x5, and specifically for hypertrophy, they're doing 3 sets of 10, 3 sets of 12. And I just thought to myself, what if it was the opposite? And this is a concept since 2013 that I've applied to a lot of things. Because the average person, think about the average person, how they train. The average person does this. So in my mind, I kind of got to this point where they're average because this is how they do things, how they think. So what if they did the opposite? What would that mean? What's the opposite of average? So I just kind of started fooling with this idea that it's the opposite. I got to start doing the opposite of everything. And I learned that turning a strength exercise is very easy to turn into a hypertrophy exercise. You just have to do more volume. And the volume I ended up refining it over years and understanding that not all reps are created equal. There are reps that have, the right amount of tension, and there's reps that have the wrong amount of tension, whether they're too light or too heavy, specifically for hypertrophy. And the other thing was, there was always this idea, well, you got to train to failure for hypertrophy. And so I also understood that, failure. What is failure? There's not a people don't question this because it's so common. What is failure? And most people would say, well, it's when you can't do another rep. And then I started thinking, I don't think that's even, there's got to be another part to it. And here's the epiphany I had. As a coach, as a strength coach, as a performance coach, I would talk about high outputs or high effort, whether you're strength training or running sprints. And so I got to this idea in my head that it's all the same. Meaning, if I want to be as big and strong as possible, I'd like to train my biggest and strongest muscle fibers. And if I want to run as fast as possible, I'd like to train my biggest and fastest muscle fibers. So in sprints, it's high outputs. It's managing fatigue. And if you think about it, it's high outputs. It's activating the right muscle fibers, the type 2 fibers, and it's managing fatigue. So if you think about it, if you run sprints, have you ever in your life run a sprint till you can't run anymore? No, it's way too far. The failure in sprinting, that would be way too far. And what does it mean too far? It means that you wouldn't be able to do another sprint. And if you did, you'd be in a state of fatigue. You're wasting your time because you want to prioritize high outputs and fiber activation. And I know fatigue inhibits motor recruitment. So you're managing fatigue. That's how it works. Well, it's the same thing in the weight room. I want to target my type 2 muscle fibers with high outputs, and I want to manage fatigue. So taking that same concept, why would I ever take a set to actual failure? It's going to be too much fatigue and inhibit motor recruitment, inhibit the amount of volume I can accumulate. So this idea around, training to failure, I started to refine it, and it's still not popular, it's not mainstream. But if I wanted to truly be different, I just knew I had to think differently. So this idea of training to failure in the weight room, I would quantify it as if you do one rep and then the second rep, right? And you're measuring the speed of the bar. And the second rep is faster than the first rep. And then the third rep is slower than the second rep. And the fourth rep is slower than the third rep. You're failing. You should stop because you've already recruited as many motor units as you can, and now you're diminishing. The fatigue you're accumulating fatigue. So failure isn't actual literal failure, in my opinion. If you're training for hypertrophy, it's failing. When you start to fail, you stop. And that's going to be different for everybody. An experienced lifter, I think, can train closer to actual failure and repeat it because they're more experienced and they're more proficient. They've got more tissue tolerance. They've got more mental fortitude, whatever you want to call it. But this mindset was also something that I took to my compound lifts, because if you've heard anything I talk about when accumulating tonnage with low rep sets, that you need enough weight to slow the bar down so you've got the right tension. And the low rep sets help you manage fatigue. They're more repeatable. And you hear me talk about total tonnage. So people talk about time under tension. It has nothing to do with time under tension. It has everything to do with tension. And not all tension is relevant. So if you did a set of 10, the first 6 or 7 don't have the same amount of tension the last 3 or 4 do if you're going to failure. So all I'm doing is flipping it, where I'm using more weight to slow the bar down, start me closer to that actual failure, but I don't need to go that far. So that mindset definitely helped me. The other things I started doing were, because I'm in an open gym, I started doing strict military press. if you've ever done overhead press, scratch that. If you've ever done any work with your arms overhead, if you've ever painted a ceiling, or anything where your arms are overhead for extended period of time, you would know that the soreness between your shoulder blades was insane. And the mid trap is a super underdeveloped muscle on most people, that when you do develop it, it gives you this thickness and it gives you this strength in your shoulders that transfers to other things. But pressing overhead was something that was, for me, coming through as a baseball player, it was a no-no. It was dangerous. It was bad for you. And as an athlete, as a younger person, I never was able to think about that myself. It's just what I was told. So as a coach, I started thinking, I don't understand. I can't push something overhead. Since when has anybody been that fragile? So I kind of figured that out, that, that's not the case. That for some reason it's popular to think pressing overhead is dangerous. Maybe somebody tore their shoulder and then they started telling everybody how dangerous it was. You can find that, there's anti-back squatters. There's a guy out there, y'all know who I'm talking about. He's anti-back squat because he hurt himself back squatting. Well, that's your fault. You did something wrong. It's not to say that nobody can back squat all of a sudden. So kind of thinking outside the box, getting outside these norms, really transformed the way I looked at training, and my results. For sure, my results changed. The other thing I started doing was I understood that RDLs and other exercises that kind of get categorized as accessories, just like I said earlier, where it's not the exercise that makes it strength or hypertrophy, it's the rep scheme. So RDL is a fantastic exercise that nobody maxes out on because they think it's dangerous or they think it's an accessory. So they automatically train at these higher rep ranges. I think that's a massive mistake. The RDL is just another variation of deadlift. You should train it to 1 rep max, 2 rep max, 3 rep max. You should train it with low rep sets. You should try to accumulate tonnage, just like all the other compound exercises that I talk about. And the same is for pull-ups. People are not training pull-ups. And when I mean training, I'm talking about low rep sets for tonnage, just like any other barbell movement. I have literally done 30 and 40 sets of pull-ups of 1 to 2, 3 reps. When you start training pull-ups in that manner, your physique has to change. Your arms are going to be big, whether you got a pump or not. It's just when you start training in a way that forces your body to literally change, not just fill up with a bunch of blood and volume and get a pump. It's a transformation that people see through sweatshirts, through sweatpants. You can't really, hide it. When people, I laugh at the idea of a pump cover. You can't cover real dense muscle. You're not going to cover it. You can see right through anything. So ironically, if anybody's out there, especially bodybuilders, because we all have a tendency to train how we want to identify. So we make these like factions where bodybuilders do this and powerlifters do that and strongmen train this way. And if you erase those labels and then you just apply methods and concepts, this is especially true for bodybuilders. If you want to get bigger, you've got to stop training like a bodybuilder. You got to start training to build your body. That I say that all the time because that's what happened to me. I thought bodybuilding was the best way to get bigger. It's not even close. I actually call bodybuilding a warm-up. And those of you that go to the gym and get a pump, I would say congratulations. That's a warm-up. You're nice and warm. If you got a big pump, you're really warm. And I say that jokingly, but I sincerely mean it. You've got to get past the pump. That is not the goal in the workout, and it's actually a byproduct of mechanical tension. So if you exploit mechanical tension through low rep sets and accumulating high amounts of high quality tonnage with high outputs, you get a bigger pump. Trust me, I'm a meathead. I lift every single day because I like it. I wouldn't do it if it didn't feel good and I didn't get the results I wanted. I would change anything. If the results were there, I would change it. So those are the biggest things through my years of lifting. I started lifting when I was 11. I'm about to be 38. So do the math. I've been training a long time, and I've refined this idea of accumulating, high quality tonnage, recruiting the bigger type 2 muscle fibers, and managing fatigue. That's the biggest one I think that people, it's the hardest to understand, is managing the fatigue, savoring it and timing it to where you don't exhaust until you've done enough work to accumulate muscle tissue. So if you're a bodybuilder and you're training on machines, you're doing a lot of bicep curls, trade the bicep curls for pull-ups, trade the lateral raises for strict overhead press, and when I say trade, do it, don't eliminate it, but spend more time doing these other compound lifts. Instead of, people say bench press isn't good for hypertrophy. Nothing is good for hypertrophy if you don't do enough volume, and volume that matters with the right amount of tonnage. So reassess. If you're bodybuilding, flatten the snow, whatever you got to do, think about this idea of building your body and using other implements, other concepts. And if you're training for years, how could you train long term and never say I at least tried it? And when I say try it for 6 to 9 weeks, and talk to somebody who trains this way so that you get the most out of it. Don't give it just a little bit of effort. Commit to it. There is a learning curve to it, but it's no doubt the biggest thing that helped me change my physique over the years, and I hope it'll change yours too.